Welcome once again, and we are proceeding with our series, and this is the last step within the overhead analysis or costing, and it is called overhead absorption or absorption of overheads to cost units or products. Here now we have moved from a step of the cost centers, and now we are on the final products. What we are doing is between the production and the output. So when we are doing the absorption of overheads, we expect that those service departments we have already put their cost in the production department, and what that was the secondary apportionment. When that one is done, it means what is remaining is to assign those costs to the outputs we've produced, so that they can form the production cost of those units or the cost per unit. So after all service department overhead costs have been apportioned to the production department, that was the secondary apportionment, the next step is to assign overheads to different products. And we are saying the other way you can define this absorption of overhead is allotment of overheads to the cost units. We are finding the costs that is constituted in the outputs we've produced. This means that the overheads incurred in the production become part of the cost of product or service through the following. We do these two steps: how we determine the cost that is within the output that has been produced. One, we calculate the overhead absorption rate, and this overhead absorption rate, it is the rate that helps us to allocate the costs that we've incurred in the production to the final products. This overhead absorption rate is the same as overhead recovery rate, because we are recovering what we have put in. The inputs in terms of raw materials, labor, variable overheads, and others we've put in the production process. So here we are recovering whatever we have recovered in terms of the unit of product. It can be in the terms of the units of product, or it can be in terms of machine hours. It can be in terms of direct labor and others, as we are going to set down there, because I made another slide. These are the methods we use when we are absorbing these overheads. But remember, the other side, we were using costing drivers, or the bases we use to apportion these costs. Now we are also assigning bases, but within the production department. If it was the mixing department, what was the main? If it is a red twister, how many kilowatts we utilized in that production department, so that we can contribute it to the output. That's what we are trying to do. And in this case, we are seeing that we either use the units we've produced, because when you use the units you've produced, you will get the total cost you've incurred. If, let's say, we've incurred 2 billion in a production of 100,000 units, you divide that and you get the cost per unit. That is in terms of the units. If, let's say, we are computing using these machine hours, then we can be also able to allocate the cost we've incurred, the total cost we've incurred, over the total number of the machine hours we've spent. But don't forget that these overhead absorption rates, we have two types. We have the blanket overhead absorption, and that's where the company sets a single overhead absorption rate that is going to be used in absorbing the costs into the final products. And this blanket overhead absorption rate shouldn't be used. I repeat, it shouldn't be used in the production because you cannot trace directly. Because if you just assign that, let's say we use one overhead, there are some overheads which you can't even quantify, and for you, you're just using one method to compute everything. So it needs to make sure that you are not overstating or understating the costs we've incurred. You use the appropriate basis. If it is in terms of labor cost we've incurred, make sure you're using the direct labor hours. If you're not using blanket overhead absorption rate, then you may be using the multiple overhead absorption rates. These multiple overhead absorption rates, these are the ones, the unit cost when each of the item or each of the cost that has been incurred in the production department has been given an appropriate base that can be used to allocate the costs we've incurred in that department. That's what we mean. Remember, in the absorption, we are only dealing with the production department. We left that part of the service department. So we are now contributing, we are looking at the production costs and how they are contributed within the output. And the last step, because the first step was to calculate the overhead absorption rate, and the last one, we charge the overhead to the cost unit or the products. How do we do that? By charging that, we get the OAR we've got, we multiply by the actual unit of the base we've incurred in each department. If let's say in each department we produced, in department A produced 10,000 units, if we are using number of units, and we produced 10,000 units, it means it will be that OAR, that will be the cost per unit multiplied by the number of units that has been produced in that department. And that's how we get those absorption rates. Then what happens when you're absorbing these overheads? There sometimes there is either under or over absorption of these overheads. And how they come in is that you may find that what you've put in, you have incurred, let's say, a certain amount of cost, and you find out that the output you are getting is more than what you had expected to produce, or it is less than what you expected to produce. That causes under or over absorption of overheads, and we are going to see them in the next video with how we treat them, the accounting treatment, how do they affect the profit of the company in terms of the over and the under absorptions. So we shall see them when we reach to the next video, and we shall be seeing what are some of these causes that may cause those under or over absorption. Hope you can be able to link up. We are going to look at a certain question. We see how we can absorb these costs to the final products. And when we have done that, I will pick a broad question that will be having most of these steps we've been talking about. But as for now, I'm going to get a question that is specifically on this. But when you're done with this and you have mastered it, you can go ahead and pick a single question that can be having each and everything, so that we get to know what can be done. Thank you for watching. Until we meet again, it's bye for now.